Well, Greeny, there's both interest and intrigue. Look, Brendan Sorsby is a quarterback who has first-round talent. And when a player like this becomes available in a forum like the Supplemental Draft, the entire NFL is going to dig in as much as they can. I've been told by both NFL sources and Sorsby's camp that they expect all 32 teams to be at his pro day, which is going to be July 10th in the Dallas area at Carroll High School in Southlake, Texas. His agent, Ron Slavin, told me yesterday that 25 GMs have reached out already directly to him to talk about Sorsby and his availability. Because of the nature of the supplemental draft, Greeny, where you put in a blind pick, everyone kind of has skin in the game here. And because it's a quarterback who could end up being a franchise quarterback, I'm not saying he is, but the talent is certainly intriguing enough, everyone is going to dig in. Quarterbacks are the engine of this multi-billion-dollar football industry. And if someone potentially has the talent to be franchise altering, it's going to be up to all of these NFL franchises to dive in and do their due diligence on Brendan Sorsby. So expect a lot of interest and a lot of intrigue between now and whenever that supplemental draft is held, assuming his application is taken by the NFL in the next week.
Mike T., if you're a general manager, tell me how you're proceeding.
I am going to scour his background. I want to learn as much about him as possible. I want to know who's moving with him when he goes to Team X. One of the questions I'm going to ask him is, who do you call when you have a bad day? Who do you lean on in terms of your support system? And then I think the mindset, Greeny, is, as Pete alluded to, someone's going to see this as an opportunity. Clearly he made a mistake. Clearly he's going to need to pay a penalty. With that said, Kayshon Boutte, who's now a very good receiver in the NFL, had a very similar fact pattern. His came out a little bit later, but he bet on games at LSU, and now he's transitioned to be a good player, and that's what you hope happens with Brandon Sorsby. And to me, Greeny, what's so interesting is some team, maybe a team like Philadelphia, Minnesota, a non-obvious team, is going to say, this is an unexpected opportunity. We believe in our team. We believe in our resources. And if we partner with Brandon Sorsby, as Pete alluded to, because of his talent, you may wind up with an outstanding quarterback.
Dominique, yesterday on this show, Damian Woody expressed some pretty serious pushback to the extent that if he were a player on a team, he would be very, very skeptical of that team bringing in Brendan Sorsby. If you were on the team, how would you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to agree with what Damian said, but I don't think it would matter quite that much. Like, I think it would be something that I'd be aware of, and that'd be the first thing I knew about him. So I'm sure I would have like a little bit of like misgivings about him, but I think ultimately what it would come down to is he good enough? Like, that's what it normally comes down to in football. You play with a lot of guys who do a lot of things, make a lot of decisions, make mistakes, do great things. And what ultimately matters, whether you're going to stay on the team or not, whether we're going to love the player or not, is how much he can help your team play. And I think it's going to be the same thing for Brendan Sorsby, unless he continues to make decisions like this going forward. If this was a one-time thing that happened in college, like that's a lot of players in the NFL who had one-time really poor decisions, or a series of poor decisions in this case that led to some sort of punishment. They can play in a league. Most people end up not caring.
That both you and D Wood actually have a personal history and experience with something like this.
Yeah, listen, my freshman year at BC, Damian's sophomore year, there was a gambling scandal at BC. 13 players were affected by it. And so I do think, perspective in terms of guys betting on games, the addiction of it, and, what that means, to a guy that, in this case, you're talking about potentially being, the franchise quarterback for an organization. I do think that, in terms of, we group off the field concerns, together, and it could be a number of different things. I do think it's going to give some organizations and some people inside the organization, legitimate pause. So I would say that, is going to be the case in the process. And I think that matters for a couple of reasons. Listen, Sorsby's talent, when you look at, quarterbacks, he has first round talent when you compare him to the physical ability, size, production, stuff like that, of other guys that have been recent first-round draft picks. So it's not crazy to think that, when you hear Pete talk about, listen, people are talking about second-round pick maybe, or Mike saying, look, this is a great opportunity. But you also have to factor in, this is quarterback, not defensive line. And so I think the off-the-field concerns at any level, exhaustive. This can't be. This is going to happen. The draft is going to happen in July. And then this year is basically a punt redshirt year, because you're getting him so late in the process that it's not like, hey, you're getting him in April and you're going to have OTAs and minicamp, and actually at some level, you're going to feel like you're going to be able to prepare him to play. So I think there are a few factors in terms of, the evaluation process and the ability for him to actually help you this season.
Yeah, and the possibility there'll be some sort of NFL discipline. We don't know how the league will handle that. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, but Greeny, picking up on what Tim said, take a team like Philadelphia. You, in all likelihood, would have a low second-round pick. You drafted Jalen Hurts at the bottom of the second round when you had Carson Wentz. If you take someone like Brandon Sorsby in the bottom of the second round, and he clearly needs help, he's been an addict, and you get him the help he needs in a year, you may wind up with a player you would have no chance of getting. And that's why I think there's a non-obvious team that's going to be a major factor before this is.
Bears fans, let me make this clear right away. Caleb Williams is QB1 in Chicago. No debate, no controversy, no confusion. But when a quarterback with first-round talent suddenly becomes available in the NFL Supplemental Draft, and reports say all 32 teams could show up to his pro day, the Bears should at least pay attention. Not because Caleb is in danger, but because smart organizations study every opportunity before the rest of the league figures out the market. Brendan Sorsby is one of the most interesting and complicated stories in football right now. On the field, people are talking about size, arm talent, athletic ability, production, and possible starting quarterback traits. That is why the league is curious. Quarterbacks change everything. If there is even a small chance a player can become a franchise quarterback, NFL teams are going to dig, scout, interview, investigate, and make sure they know exactly what they are looking at. But here's the serious part. Sorsby admitted to betting on college sports, including football, and for a quarterback, that is a major red flag. Quarterback is not just another position. The quarterback is the face of the franchise, the leader of the locker room, the player who answers questions every week and represents the entire organization. So any team interested in him has to ask the hard questions. Was this a one-time mistake? Does he have the right support system? Can he be trusted? Can he grow from it? And that's where the Bears angle gets interesting. Chicago does not need Sorsby to save anything. Thank goodness for that. The Bears already have Caleb Williams, and that changes the whole conversation. But should Ryan Poles still do his homework? Absolutely. That is what good general managers do. You do not ignore talent. You evaluate it. You study the cost. You understand the market. Then you decide if it fits your plan. Now, would I spend a high pick on Sorsby if I'm the Bears? No, not with Caleb as the centerpiece. Not when Chicago still needs to keep building around him with protection, weapons, defensive depth, and players who can help right now. If another team wants to use a second-round pick because they need a future starter, let them do that. The Bears should not get emotional here. But if Sorsby slides, if the concerns push him down the board, if the cost becomes low enough to treat him as a long-term developmental quarterback or future trade asset, then okay, you can have the conversation. Not as competition for Caleb. Let's be very clear, Caleb is the guy. But as a low-cost quarterback investment, that is something smart teams at least consider. And honestly, this whole story should make Bears fans feel even better about Chicago's situation. While other teams are still searching, gambling, and hoping to find a quarterback, the Bears already have their franchise guy. That is power. That is stability. That is the kind of position this franchise has been waiting years to be in. So my take is simple. Scout Brendan Sorsby, but do not chase Brendan Sorsby. Not lose sight of the mission. Caleb Williams is the franchise. Ben Johnson's offense has to be built around Caleb's growth, timing, confidence, and leadership. Every major decision needs to support that plan. At the end of the day, this is actually good news for Chicago. It reminds the whole league how valuable quarterbacks are, while the Bears finally get to operate from a place of strength. They do not need to panic. They do not need to reach. They can be patient, smart, and aggressive only when the value is right. Now I want to hear from you, Bears fans. Would you use a late pick on Brendan Sorsby if he fell? Or should the Bears stay completely away and focus every resource on Caleb Williams? Drop your opinion in the comments, hit the like button if Caleb is your unquestioned QB1, and subscribe for daily Chicago Bears news, rumors, reactions, and breakdowns. Bear down.